Hello, Dave Jones. How are you?
How you doing, Bob?
I'm good. I'm good. It's time for the first of two Blue-White Breakdown podcasts this week. Indiana week revenge game, if you prefer.
No.
James Franklin does not like
James Franklin's
that
having
term.
none of that. James Franklin's having none of that revenge talk.
We are here to discuss James's Tuesday news conference. A little later in the week, we'll specifically break down the Indiana matchups and keys to the game. We're going to make our picks, but today is really all about James Franklin and his news conference. I have a couple of thoughts on it. Dave, what kind of struck your fancy, my man?
Well, I gotta say, the part about the revenge, the no revenge. Do you buy that? I don't know. I mean, coaches will use any sort of leverage they can get, any sort of leverage, and I don't know. He said absolutely not. We do not even consider that. We consider only preparation. The opponent this year, we might look at film, but this is an exciting opportunity, and we're not going to act like.
Yeah,
but this is this year's team.
The players remember last year's game. They have to. I do think they will be pretty motivated to play Michael Penix and the Hoosiers. Last year's game, I know we'll talk about it in a couple of days, but it was just. Well, I mean, it was maybe the weirdest game I think Penn State has probably played that I can remember. You go back a little bit further than I, but man. That was a bizarre game. It actually wasn't that great of a game. And then it just heated up, midway through the fourth quarter. And then it was impossible to predict what was going to happen next.
It was a typical first game of the year in that the first half, the offenses looked completely disconnected.
Yeah.
Dreary was the word. And especially with no fans. That was the first time we experienced no fans.
You were there.
College football game. The only people there were families. So it was just strange.
And
then all hell broke loose in the second half, but Penn State had the game in control. Had they just handled the end game, the infamous end game trouble that they have with time management, and they scored a touchdown they should not have scored. Had they just gone down at the one, they can pretty much run out the clock, and when Indiana had about 50 seconds of regulation time in which to score, which would have been very unlikely. Unfortunately, they scored a touchdown, go up 8 points. Indiana, Penix, that really was Penix's best moment of his career to that point, because he made a lot of terrific throws, firing right into the fire and completing passes. Not only that, the secondary catches, and then the receivers came down with catches. They managed to come down with catches, and they scored the tying touchdown. Scoring the tying 2-point conversion, went to overtime, and you know what happened. The final play was, I still don't know if that was a touchdown, a 2-point conversion or not. What do you think?
I think he was short, but I don't think the officials were going to overturn the call on the field. I don't know how any other way to put it. It was too debatable. I thought he was short, but I thought they were going to stay with the call.
I thought live he was short. The question is whether he was out of bounds or had broken the plane.
Yeah.
The second viewpoint I saw after the game, it actually looked to me like the meat of the ball. Like the ball is kind of like this, and the point is it could have been hitting out of bounds, but the meat of the ball might not have actually broken the plane. Yeah. So certainly they weren't going to overturn it. Anyway, the point is that if they had revenge against anyone, they would probably have had revenge against their head coach, who didn't make it clear that they did not need to score a touchdown. Now, he said he made it clear, but I mean, if you let Sean Clifford handle the ball and he's the only one you have to tell, or at most tell two running back. Was it Kevon Lee? I can't remember.
No, it was Devin Ford.
Devin Ford. You tell those two people, not the whole team, look, we can't score a touchdown, and make it completely clear. Then they don't score, and who knows what happens to that season. So it's not like he can really deal with a revenge factor anyway, because he was partly culpable for the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's saying that there's no revenge. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if I buy that or not, but
Yeah.
one of his little conventions that he had. What struck you otherwise?
I've been, yeah. So I've
wasn't
been
a ton about. I'll tell you something else. Go ahead. Go ahead.
ever since the end of the Villanova game. I've just been thinking a lot about what I have seen from this running game specifically, not just the Villanova game, but the Auburn game, the Wisconsin game. Ball State, they did run the ball, but Ball State is just not it's not a very good team this year. And I think they just kind of rolled over. And Penn State had a very balanced day. I think they ran for like 240 yards. But the other three games, it's just been a struggle. Dave, I'm starting to come to the conclusion that even though Penn State's got a deep running back room, and these backs are talented, they are desperately missing a running back that can make the guy miss in the hole. When Penn State was able to run the ball with Saquon Barkley, there were a lot of times where he made the guy miss. He made the one guy miss, and he had the speed to make big plays. The fact that Sean Clifford, after 4 games, still has the longest rush on the team. I think it's like 43 yards. The second longest rush was Noah Cain, I think 34 yards at Wisconsin. These guys are talented, but they lack the ability. They can run you over. They can push the pile a little bit, but they don't have a home run threat. And they don't, when they get in the hole and it's one guy against the running back, more often than not, they can't make that guy miss. And I think that's one thing that's really hurting them. Well, if you remember, Dave, at after the game, what I noticed was where Penn State's offensive line gets in trouble is when an opposing linebacker or an edge defender blitzes. I think they're real good with guys in front of them, but I think when they blitz or they stunt, I see them not necessarily handling the protection or picking up the guys, whether it's in the middle or outside or it's a blitzing. There was a play where a blitzing linebacker got Clifford against Villanova, and I think Rasheed Walker stayed on a double team to his right and never really got the guy that was coming off the corner. It looks to me like I think there's some communication issues still early in the season, and I think that's what's really hurting the offensive line. I know there's been times where they haven't necessarily gotten push. I think Matt Millen, who called the game, mentioned that quite frequently on the Big Ten telecast. But I think it's a variety of things that's hurting the offensive line. They can look good at times. They were good in pass protection against Auburn. I thought they played pretty well against Auburn. But to see them struggle, or to see Penn State struggle to run the ball against Villanova, I just think they're going to have to. This is a passing team, and I think the run's just secondary this year, and I don't know that it's going to get much better. They're 13th in the conference in rushing, 3.6 yards a carry. Yes, they played 2 pretty good defenses in Auburn and Wisconsin, but I just think that this is not a team that I think is going to, against the better teams on the schedule, is going to be able to run the ball 150-plus yards a game.
I think you can run out stuff on them and maybe explore that. And if you can get any runs out of the running game. See, ideally, you want to run between the tackles because it forces safeties to come up and support if you do it successfully. And then that opens up everything for you. They haven't been able to do it. They're going to be able to do it with these guys. So they got to go to plan B. They were able to go outside in the second half against Wisconsin, and that opened everything up, both with the run and the pass. It might be this is just going to be a workaround for Mike Yurcich, and that's the end of it. Every team, I don't see any teams other than Alabama who don't have a weak spot this year of some sort. And that hasn't been true in the past. And that includes certainly Clemson and Ohio State. I think you can run on the edge on Ohio State. We've already seen teams do it. Oregon did it very successfully. So maybe they can't run between the tackles. Maybe they can't run inside zone. But I'd look for that maybe in the future. And I think you can do it against Indiana.
Yeah, I just think that, hey, this is, Franklin talked about it. He brought Yurcich in, big plays, passing game, score fast. If they get to 450 yards of offense at the end of the day, Dave, it doesn't have to be 150 on the ground. If they're going to throw for 420 yards, you're like you said, every team has got an issue. And then the run game, Iowa's averaging 3.3 yards per attempt. and they were life and death with Colorado State last week. I just think that you're seeing this is an imperfect conference this year. And, Penn State at least is generating chunk plays. They're at least their receivers are good enough, I think, to compensate for a lot of what ails the running game. And people will say, well, what happens in a close game and they can't execute their 4-minute offense, which traditionally means running the ball. The solution, Dave, might just be with those receivers, the way they catch the ball, the solution might just be to catch the ball, throw it, stay in bounds instead of running it, or like one of those swing passes that are essentially, extended handoffs. If they're not going to be able to run the ball, fine. They're going to have to be really efficient in the passing game.
To move on with Franklin, he also said something about getting to Michael Penix, which I don't know if you watched the Western Kentucky game, but I watched a pretty good piece of that.
You're crazy.
Well, no, I thought that the whole game was weird. I mean,
I think Indiana scored on every possession, and they just
but he actually made, and it's Western Kentucky. First of all, why are you playing a game in Bowling Green, Kentucky? It looked like you could make that field into, like they could turn it around and make it a dirt track in about an hour if they wanted to, World of Outlaws or something. And it's really
Queens Grove,
really dimly lit. It looked like just total rent. And they're playing. I just can't imagine a top half of a power conference playing in a place like that. But that was Glass, the AD at Indiana's decision years ago. I have no idea why they were playing there. But they did get to Penix a couple of times and got right in his face, and he made some better throws than I've seen him make under pressure. I would tend to not necessarily try to get to him that much and see if you can just cover with your back seven and make him make perfect throws, which he's not known for doing, and maybe let him make the mistake. I know that's not a sexy way of playing defense, but I don't think Penn State has gotten that much pressure. How do you feel about the pressure they've gotten on opposing quarterbacks with a basic 4? That was another question too.
So I think the way that you look at pressure defense and pass rush has changed in recent years because of the advent of the 3-step drop and getting the ball out quick. It's really not about sacks. It's about quarterback hits, and it's about forcing the guy to pull the ball down. You can disrupt a passing offense in a variety of ways. It's just getting harder and harder, Dave, to get the pure. Unless you're playing against Graham Mertz, which Penn State was in week 1, it's really hard to get to a quarterback the way that offenses are designed. But it does show up with quarterback hits like Arnold Ebiketie against Auburn. Penn State didn't have a sack, right? I think he had 4 quarterback hits in that game, and he just missed a couple of sacks where he was coming around the edge. So I think that it's a little bit misleading when you look at sacks anymore. I think it's really just about making the quarterback feel threatened. And I think if Penn State can do that, the 2 most athletic defenses Indiana has faced and Penix has faced this year, obviously, he's thrown 6 interceptions in those games. He threw 2 pick sixes against Iowa, and in the Cincinnati game, I think he was intercepted 3 times as well. I think there's going to be opportunities. Again, we're getting into I think there will be opportunities for Penn State to get turnovers and interceptions in this game. There's no question in my mind. I think they have the secondary to do that. The question is, are they going to hold on to the ball?
Well, to your point, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's certainly the Penn State defense is gaining a reputation as quarterback wreckers, career wreckers. First they got Graham Mertz all but benched and started him on a downward trend, and now Bo Nix has lost his job. Did they do both of those? It reminds me of Penn State's. It would only remind me of this. Penn State's run 20 years ago in the NCAA tournament, where they got 2 coaches fired in the first round of the NCAA tournament, both from Tim Welsh from Providence and the guy from Matt Doherty from North Carolina. Those 2 losses to Penn State ruined their careers, and it was a downward arc ever since then.
Just when you think Graham Mertz can't sink any further.
Oh my God!
I mean that Notre Dame game.
I go back to Jeff Patrikas before the season telling me And I shocked me at the time. He said the wrong guy transferred. The wrong guy transferred. I said, what are you talking about, Jack Cohn?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, Jack Cohn isn't exactly lighting it up either, but he's a better option.
But what is
a better option? You're right.
What is he? What is he?
He's a game manager.
The quarterback that Wisconsin has always had.
Yeah,
that's right. He's the quarterback they're comfortable with. He's the type of quarterback that they can be comfortable with. And Graham Mertz is not. Graham Mertz is this 5-star rocket arm guy they've never had. It's like you're all of a sudden dating somebody you shouldn't be dating.
I'll kick in your coverage, Dave. I'll kick in your coverage.
He hasn't been a fit. Remember when Ferentz started winning early in his career in 01-02, and they got the surprise Big Ten title your first year, undefeated.
Oh yeah, Brad Banks.
02. He started recruiting guys who didn't really fit the Iowa mold. He started going down into Florida and recruiting you get 13 guys from Florida, I think, on the 04 or 05 roster, and they went in the tank. They didn't belong at Iowa.
Kirk Ferentz is so comfortable in 6-4 games. I just think that's his zone. He wants to win 11-6. He wants to win 13-12. He lives in those weird scores. First one to 16 wins. That's what he likes to do. No, nothing fancy. He's meat and potatoes. He butters his bread. That's what he wants. He doesn't want anything fancy. He doesn't want anything a la carte. Just give him 17 points and he's going to get you 9 wins.
I don't know if you noticed he had a 9 tight end set against Colorado State. They always have a lot of tight ends, but I mean, I swear to God, Colorado State, which is a bad team this year, that should.
Yeah.
This is a game I think Penn State should win, but another question today is, and correct me if I'm wrong.
I will.
Somebody asked him about what he tells recruits when his name is linked to the USC job. And he completely stonewalled it and said, our focus is on Indiana. I don't know if you've been around the press conferences, but I've dealt with that and answered that multiple times. Multiple times? I remember him being asked once about this, right? Am I wrong?
You are correct.
Yeah,
it was a good stonewall. Give him credit. That's a good stonewall. That's the Heisman. That was the James Franklin Heisman.
Our focus is on Indiana this week.
I got to ask you this because I just think it was fascinating. He was trying, late in the press conference, somebody asked him about what he thinks of on the way to the stadium. He sees all.
Oh my God!
And
I knew.
How does he not know the names of any streets in State College after 8 years? Is that possible?
Not even McKee Street. He doesn't know McKee.
James, where is University Drive? Just diagram it on a map for me. Can you do that?
You know what that is? That's really, and of course that was a 7-minute answer. That was a room service question about made for fluff. Yeah. That's one time I talked to, I can't remember whose wife it was, maybe Norwood's wife or Ganter's wife, about their lives after they got out of coaching. It might have been Norwood's wife. And they had 5 sons, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Dave, Jordan, 3 others. I can't remember all of them. I'm not sure who it was. It might not have been him.
It's all right.
Yeah, but she told me that he didn't know how to write a check. It might have been Fran Ganter when he got out.
I think it is. I remember you said. I think it was Ganter.
He did not know how to write a check because everything is done by either the wives or support staff or everything. They don't have to know anything. I mean, he's driven everywhere he goes, probably.
Sure.
It's not like he has to go out for milk to the Jiffy Mart. He doesn't have to know streets. And frankly, it's like phone numbers. Addresses and streets are on GPS. Who needs to know?
It is tunnel vision at its finest, but also, do you think he knows the name of his development where he lives? Do you think he does?
I just know that somebody asked me, a guy I know is coming up from Tennessee. He's a Facebook friend. He's not a friend. and he's coming up to see his first Penn State game on Saturday. And he asked me, what are the things I should see or do in State College?
Oh, I can't wait to hear this answer.
I mean,
go to the creamery.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I said, first of all, you'd have to pay me about $1 million a year to live up there, and then I think I could bear it maybe 2 years before I'd lose my mind. But
I think I could live in State College. I wouldn't mind it. Once you get comfortable with it.
Yeah, as long as you have Coors Light, you could live anywhere.
They sell it everywhere, Dave. That's the beauty of it. They sell it. They sell it everywhere. Hey, here's what I want to ask you. One of the things I wanted to ask you, not necessarily related to the press conference. We've seen 4 games. So who are your top 3 Lions on the team? Who would you say are their 3 most impactful players? I'll put it that way, because it doesn't necessarily maybe relate to stat.
The first guys I think of always now are, I think, the best performing unit, the most unusually well-performing unit, which I think is the secondary. Yeah. I love this secondary.
Right.
So I think of Joey Porter.
Yes. Good answer.
My answer really has to do with my favorite players more than necessarily my most impactful.
Okay.
Now is he going to be? Is any field side corner going to be? He's a boundary side corner more often than a field side corner, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is that guy going to be the most impactful guy on a defense? Well, not necessarily. But I love him. I love the way he plays, because he's a big corner who can cover, and he's always around the ball. So that's one guy. All right. I'd say Brandon Smith would be another.
Good.
I think this defense, they don't have a Micah Parsons, but he's about as close as what they have. And I think he's the kind of guy that you have to deal with. And, how could you pick against Jahan Dotson at this point? He's just made tremendous catches all over the place. Has he dropped the ball at all?
I don't think he's actually dropped the pass. I think maybe Sean has not thrown it, within 20 feet of him, so he didn't catch it. But
we've caught those too.
His ability to catch the ball is to me, it's incredible. I don't think I've ever seen a receiver with hands, a Penn State receiver with his hands consistently as good as he is. He can track a ball. He can catch a ball. He can hand catch a ball that's a bullet. I mean, it's not that easy to do. I know they have gloves on, but man, it's been impressive. Parker Washington and Jahan Dotson caught all of their targets against Villanova. They were targeted 12 times. They caught all 12 passes.
Yeah, and so we're talking about not the 2016 receiving group, but not too far off. I mean, they've got 3 tight ends now who have all contributed. Are any of them as good as Mike Gesicki? Probably not. But collectively, they've been very impactful. You're getting Keandre Lambert-Smith now the ball, and he caught all those hitch passes against Auburn that he had to catch that weren't necessarily catches that are tip-ins. I mean, you have to. There's defenders right on top. So they're in very good. They're in the best situation receiving than I think they've been in 5 years. You'd agree with that, I think, right?
I think by the end of the year, this will be their best receiving core since he's been there. I just think that as Keandre
better than 16.
Well, really, 2016, it was really Godwin. It was Mike Gesicki, and it was Barkley. Their receiving core, like Irv Charles and Saeed Blacknall, each had one big moment, but these guys are starting to bring it every week. I think on a consistency basis, I think this is a better group. I do.
Well, Deshaun Hamilton had more than one moment, I would think.
That was 2017. In 2016, his moment was that drop at Pittsburgh.
I think that's unfair. Bob's been very unfair.
He was very good in 2017 and 2014. He was not as good in 16 and 15.
He had some catches. I think you better go back to the Wisconsin game and see. He had some big catches against Wisconsin.
Hey, Dave? Can we just this is not about the current team, but I just can't believe what I'm seeing. How much money is Micah Parsons going to make on his next contract?
Oh my God.
How much money is that guy going to make?
I remember.
He's unbelievable.
Do you remember where were we? We were at Pittsburgh in the 51-6 game. We were in that little hotel that Joe got us. Yeah. And it was raining all damn weekend.
Right. Yes.
And I guess he would have been a freshman that year.
Yes, that was his true freshman year. It was like second or third game. But
he was playing a lot.
Yeah.
And a fan came up to me and said, "Now, what do you think about the Micah Parsons? I don't know if it." And he's thinking a lot. And I just wait until he quits having to think.
Yeah.
When defenders get in a mode where they're just reacting to what they know is happening, they learn how to read things, they learn how to read patterns, and if they book up and they're smart on the opponent, then they can unleash the fury. And I said, you just wait, wait on this guy. He's going to be a handful. And it didn't take him long till he got up to speed. But man, did you think? I also people down in Dallas asked me about him as a pro. And I said, I think he's ready-made for the NFL. I think it's going to be terrific. But what did you think of last night? That was pretty impressive. He was a wrecking ball.
I get so mad when the people who were doing the draft analysis, when they would evaluate Micah, they kept calling him an off-the-ball linebacker, and that could not be more. Penn State used him in that role, but there were times at Penn State where they turned him loose. And whenever they turned him loose, especially late in the season, he transformed into something otherworldly. He is a lethal 3-4 outside linebacker who can put his hand on the ground and wreck a game plan. And the sooner the Cowboys realize who this guy really is, like it's a wrap. He's transformed that defense. He reminds me so much, Dave, of Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack was a linebacker at Buffalo, and then he got a little bit bigger, and he developed into an edge rusher that is just, he's now 270 pounds, but when he played at 245, which is the weight that Micah was, he was a little bit more like Micah in college. I just think as this guy gets bigger, and the fact that he loves the game, like he just loves to play, when you can track Jalen Hurts on a zone read and spot him a couple of steps and then run him down at 245 pounds, it's time to run up the white flag if you're the offensive coordinator and just try and get away from Micah Parsons. The problem is Dallas has already figured out they can put him in the middle or they could put him outside.
Yeah, that's what I was getting. That's what I was getting.
They can use him as an edge rusher. If you want to put him in coverage, you can, but. Yeah. I mean, he's going to terrorize as long as he's healthy. He's going to terrorize offenses.
He's a versatile guy. Can you imagine being a defensive coordinator and having this play thing that you can do anything? Because he can play in the middle. Yeah. Because he loves contact. He doesn't mind. I mean, he doesn't just have to be an edge rusher. He can play in the middle and be a wrecking ball in there too.
Yeah.
So there was a year, I guess, 2018. Where Penn State needed a guy in the middle. And I remember telling you, I think they should just play him in the middle because he can.
Penn State was in a little bit of a bind with Micah because when they saw him and they saw how they play defense, he was a defensive end at Harrisburg that played, and they made the commitment to play him. First, they tried him at middle linebacker. Then they moved him to, a box linebacker next to the middle linebacker. But I think that Brent Pry and James Franklin had figured out late in 2019, like in the Memphis game, the more they blitzed him and used him as a disruptor instead of using him in coverage, the greater the result for the Penn State defense. And had Micah played last year, I think you would have seen a little bit more of what Dallas is using him like now, because he knew he was comfortable as a linebacker and he could play linebacker, but he could also revert to his defensive end days and his edge rusher days with the Cougars. And now it's just all coming together. One more thing on Micah.
Wait a minute.
The guy never gets tired.
Yeah,
he never gets tired. Yeah. He's never out of breath. Memphis. He's running all over the place.
Memphis. I mean, remember Memphis? Yeah. That was a case in point. So tell me this: if you have to name one real, and you kind of touched on this a couple weeks ago, the most difficult job for an offensive player that has nothing to do with their prime job. Does that make sense? So
are you talking about instead of playing fast? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about running backs. I'm talking about running backs and pass protection.
Oh yeah, blitz pickups, right?
And can you imagine? See, the hardest thing for those guys to do, it's one thing to be blocking somebody who's just an average outside linebacker, or a defensive end who gets through. They move a blitzer in. Yeah. The running back has to get that guy. It's a totally other thing to have to pick up a 200-pound and that destructive. Can you imagine trying to block him as a running back? Holy crap.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess the answer, I think he's probably going to make about $225 million in his next contract. If I'm Jerry Jones, I might try and extend him now. See if he'll take the bait.
Is Brian Linder going to get any of that?
I don't know. Maybe he deserves a little bit. I mean, he and Micah are pretty tight. He's written some good stories on Micah for us, obviously. But I just am marveling at the fact that he was. I mean, I thought he was one of the 2 or 3 best players in the draft, but they don't. When you draft, it's quarterbacks and it's stuff like that. But for him to last to the 11th or 12th pick, I was just, I don't know. I don't know what some teams were thinking when he was still on the board, and they passed on him. I don't know. They're going to regret it. And yeah, I'm happy to see it. I'm a longtime Cowboys fan, and they have not had a guy like this.
You enjoyed that game last night a little bit, huh?
I had a couple Coors Lights. Yeah. The closest thing Dallas has ever had to him, and maybe it's not a fair comparison. The only player that even comes close, DeMarcus Ware. Do you remember DeMarcus Ware, number 94?
Yeah.
He played at Troy State. He was an outside linebacker, defensive end type. He played at 250. He's probably going to go in the Hall of Fame. And I know Mike has only played 3 games, but that's the vibe I get, and that's the vibe I'm getting off of Micah. DeMarcus.
I thought you were going to go back to. I thought you were going to go back to Leroy Jordan or something.
Well, I think the skill set's not quite the same, by the way, but yeah, not Chuck Howley either, Dave.
Chuck Howley, yeah.
The MVP of Super Bowl 5, the only MVP in Super Bowl history on a losing team, 16-13 Colts. Jim O'Brien kicked a field goal. Bob Lilly threw his helmet 70 yards down the Orange Bowl surface. He was so mad, but Dallas won the final year. The next year.
Nobody remembers anything good about that game. The worst Super Bowl of all time.
Dallas got, just as Wisconsin is getting Graham Mertz, Dallas got Craig Morton. And so that is now a verb. When your quarterback stinks, you just add an ED on their last name and you have a new phrase. And right now, the most popular one in college football is Graham Mertz. And you got Mertz.
Well, get off Graham Mertz.
I'll get off him. Hey, speak. We got to get off this podcast, man. It's been 35 minutes. We talked a little bit about everything. James Franklin's memory when it comes to streets. Micah Parsons, Penn State, Indiana, Penn State's running game. Dave, any final thoughts? We got to get out of here because we got to come back in a couple of days.
Well, we're going to come back Thursday, and I think what we'll talk about then is a little more about the offensive line because they have to show something.
Yeah,
I'm with running game somewhere. Yeah. So all right. And we'll get into some explosive plays in the 16% threshold and balancing analytics and intuition, and we'll get into all that.
Blue White Breakdown Podcast. He's Dave Jones. I'm Bob Flounders. We'll be back later in the week, and we're going to tell you who's going to win Saturday night. I have a funny feeling we're going to pick the same team, but we'll see.
See you guys.